Human trafficking, also known as modern-day slavery, affects an estimated 700,000 to 2 million people every year. Thousands of victims land in the U.S., with New York being the main transit point or destination. Victims are often taken from their home country to unfamiliar places, leaving them defenseless and vulnerable. Victims are often forced to engage in sexual acts or work under slave-like conditions. The two main types of human trafficking are sex trafficking and labor trafficking, otherwise known as involuntary servitude or bondage. Statistically, an estimated 2.5 million people are victims of trafficking at any given time. Of those, 1.4 million, or 56%, are in Asia. 250,000, or 10%, are in Latin America or the Caribbean. 230,000, or 9.2%, are in the Middle East or Northern Africa. 130,000, or 5.2%, are in sub-Saharan countries. 270,000, or 10.8%, are in industrialized countries, and 200,000, or 8%, are in countries in transition. 161 countries are affected by human trafficking, either as a source, transit country, or destination. People are often taken from 127 countries to be exploited in 137 countries, affecting every continent and every type of economy. The majority of trafficking victims are 18 to 24 years old, and 1.2 million children are victims of trafficking each year. 95% of victims experience physical or sexual violence. 43% of human trafficking victims are sex slaves, and 98% of those sex slaves are women or young girls. Here are some interviews given at the UN by victims of human trafficking.
Today we will hear from several extraordinary individuals who have endured the worst forms of human exploitation and survived human trafficking. I welcome each and every one of you and thank you most sincerely for your courage, commitment, and generosity in sharing your stories of pain, suffering, and redemption.
My story happened in Ljubljana, Slovenia, where I moved in September 2004. I moved there to continue my university studies. I was alone and distant from all my friends that I had, from the world that I knew. And then I quickly found myself surrounded by strangers. One of my new friends, a girl, she said her name was Romana, offered me to stay in her apartment, since at that moment I did not know where I'm going to live. She was very kind to me and supportive, so I entirely trusted her. I was looking for a part-time job to support myself during the school year. One day, in October 2004, she came home and told me that she had organized an interview for me at an accounting firm. After that, I never saw Romana again.
म मेरो आमा बाबु बुवा खेतीबारीमा काम गर्छु कुनै अर्को रोजगार थिएन म इराकमा काम मानव तस्कर भएको मानिस हुँ
The next morning, I went to an office where I sat down for an interview with a woman. The interview had lasted about 10 minutes when two men entered the room and dragged me away to a car. I was screaming and resisting. I was taken somewhere blindfolded, then raped many times and beaten because I was resisting. I was drugged with heroin. All my things were taken and I was forced to wear sexually provocative clothes. I was forced to do prostitution in Ljubljana for about 4 months. I was repeatedly threatened in order to obey them, especially by the life and freedom of my little sister. And I was constantly reminded how easy it is for them to put her in my place.
We girls suffered more. We were distributed to rebel commanders as objects without rights and were sexually abused. We had to carry very heavy loads, cook and do other duties, including digging in the gardens in the rebel camps. I was given to a man who had 20 other abducted girls, and he was a brutal man, and I had 2 children with him.
Victims should be at the center of our response to trafficking. In my reports and in all activities I've carried out within the framework of my mandate, I have emphasized that the basis of our work should be the adoption of a victim-centered and human rights-centered approach to combat trafficking.
I was in captivity for 7 years and 10 months, and I escaped in the year 2004 when the rebels had come back to northern Uganda. I could take months talking about what I went through and what I saw. But I must be brief, so I will tell you what I think must be done to help others like me. The affected people should be given support to recover psychologically. They should be given counseling, accepting them back to the community. They should have physical support, health provision of basics like shelter and others. They should be given educational support. There should be protection, where each member state should protect its citizens, and especially the vulnerable women and children during wars and conflicts.
They need to train the police and officers and prosecutors so that they can identify and protect victims. We need to provide victims with service like the one that I received from Sanctuary for Family.
Today, we live in times where slavery is still all around us. As we move forwards, or strive to move forwards, in providing more freedom and equality and basic human rights for all, we have on the other side this horrible fact. Do we really need millions more victims in order to experience a true wake-up call? I really wonder. How many more 13-year-old girls, your daughter, my sister, our children need to be forced into prostitution?
Majority of human traffickers are men, although 42% are women. Roughly half the time, the trafficker knows the victim to some extent, whether as an acquaintance or a close friend. The estimated global annual profits made from human trafficking are $31.6 billion US dollars. Of these, $15.5 billion, or 49%, are generated in industrialized economies. 9.7 billion, or 30.6%, are generated in Asia or the Pacific. 1.3 billion, or 4.1%, in Latin America and the Caribbean. 1.6 billion, or 5%, in Sub-Saharan Africa. 1.5 billion, or 4.7%, in the Middle East and North Africa. In 2006, there were 3,160 convictions of human traffickers. That means for every 800 people trafficked, only one trafficker is convicted. Human trafficking is a human rights travesty and is the equivalent of modern-day slavery. Action needs to be taken, and more people need to become aware of this travesty. Thank you for watching our video.